Ayin Testament days. We'll start from the Mishnah. It's a new Mishnah. It's a little bit of a treat today. Well, the Eiruvin gets a little easier. It's like it's a lighter sugya. Ketan Mishtatfen b'Mavai. How do you join in? How do you participate in the Shitufei Mavais? How do you create the Shitufei Mavais? That means that all the members of an alleyway will be able to carry in the alleyway. All the courtyards surrounding the alleyway will be able to carry. It says like this: you put down a barrel. It's usually wine. You see, in Erev Chatzeris is bread, but Shitufei Mavais is usually wine. He says this is for everyone. And he acquires it to them through his children that are older, through his servants that are Jewish, and through his wife. Taisvus mentions that when it says he says it means that they're not supported by him. Because when you here's what's going on. The basic logic of what we're discussing is that we're transferring ownership from him to this small community, this area. So there has to be someone that's giving it and someone that's taking it. You can't just pass it from one hand to another and say this hand is acquiring it for them, because it's the same person. And there has to be some sort of transfer. So who could that person be that he's transferring to? So it says it could be another adult. But if that person is supported by him, so then it could be that what they acquire belongs to him. So what he's giving to them is going to be like from one hand to another. He's not really transferring anything. Okay, but through his wife it works. I guess his wife can acquire things independently. He can't give over this through his children, sons or daughters, and not through his non-Jewish servants, non-Jewish slaves, because it's the same hand. Whatever they acquire belongs to him. So he's not really transferring anything. Okay, what we're looking for is that everyone should have ownership of this one barrel of wine, and that way it's considered that they're all sharing the courtyards. They have one main courtyard that's theirs, and everything else is an extension. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda is going to be important in this Gemara. Rav Yehuda is a student of Rav, and he's a student of Shmuel. And then he becomes the founder of the yeshiva in Pumbedisa. That's what Rav was in Surah, Shmuel was in Nardoi. And Rav Yehuda starts the yeshiva in Pumbedisa, which is like the big yeshiva after that. Rabbi Yosef. Everyone is in Pumbedisa after that, until it goes back to Masamachsia, which is Rav Ashi's time, which is the Surah area. Rav Yehuda says, "Chavis shel shitufim mevayis tzarich lagbia min hakarka tefach." That when you do this acquisition, you have to lift it up from the ground one tefach. The person that's acquiring it has to take it one tefach off the ground. Okay, we're going to ask a question on that later, but meanwhile, Amar Rava, Hani Tarti Mili, these two things, Sabi de Pumbedisa Amrino. This was said by the elders of Pumbedisa. Rashi tells us, Sabi de Pumbedisa, that's Rav Yehuda and his yeshiva. Those are the elders of Pumbedisa. I think Nardoi was attacked, and everyone had to leave Nardoi, or the place wasn't livable, or they ran away, and that's when the yeshiva in Pumbedisa started. So Chadaha, one of the statements of the Sabi Pumbedisa was this, that it has to be raised the tefach off the ground for the acquisition. Idach, but there's another one. The other one is Hamakadesh imtam lugmav yatsa v'imlav la yatsa. That the Makadesh, someone that makes Kiddush, has to taste a cheekful to be Yotze Kiddush. Taisus on the bottom says, when it says Malay Lugmav, which sounds like a plural, cheekfuls, he says Lav Dafka. It's really one cheekful. If you can fill up one side of your mouth, one cheek, that's considered Malay Lugmav. Okay. Yeah, he quotes, if a Malay Lugmav is more than a Revius, so then there's a problem. Because we say a Malay Lugmav is a Raiv Revius, but Taisus brings something that alludes to that a Malay Lugmav is more than a Revius. Says it's impossible. Because if I have to make Kiddush on a Revius, and I have to drink a Malay Lugmav, so where do you get the Malay Lugmav from? It has to be less than a Revius. Okay. Rav Chaviva. Rav Chaviva says, Hanami Sami de Pumpadisa Amrino. The following statement is also said by the elders of Pumpadisa, which means Rav Yehuda and his students. Dam Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Oisim Medura Lachaya b'Shabbos. Rav Yehuda says the name of Shmuel that you can make a Medura, you can make a fire for a woman that has given birth on Shabbos. You can make the fire on Shabbos for a woman that has given birth.
That's funny because in Rambam 1, in the Rambam 1 parak, we're talking about that too. It's all about everything you can do with
Very good.
Chal Shabbos for someone
Very
else.
good. Yes, you're keeping up. That's excellent.
Funny.
That's excellent. Beautiful. Yeah, we just started. Today's, I think, the third parak, right? Very good. Yeah, the Rambam throws you into the halachas of a chayla on Shabbos like immediately. So what does it say over here? It's Savar Minei L'chaya in L'chayla Lai. They understood that only for a woman that has given birth you can make this fire, but not for a regular chayla. They also understood B'maisa Geshamim in B'maisa Cham Aloi, that only in the winter when it's cold, but not in the summer. Itmar, there's a statement, Amar Rav Chia Barav and Amar Shmuel Hikis Dam. If someone did bloodletting, b'nitztanen, and he has the chills, he got cold. Doesn't mean that only in the winter you can make a fire. It doesn't mean that only a chaya, a woman that has given birth, but it means anyone that's ill, and in any season, you can make a fire for someone that's sick. You have this story. I forget what it was. Reb Chaim asked, he was visiting someone that was sick. He asked the doctor, maybe you need more light. And the doctor said, it's not a bad idea. So he tells his son, Reb Moshe, to light the fire. Reb Chaim Soloveitchik tells his son, Reb Moshe, to light the fire. And Moshe was hesitating because the doctor didn't say that he really needs it. Reb Chaim suggested it, and he said it's not a bad idea. And anyway, he was hesitating. So over there was the Rav of Brisk, I forgot his name, Reb Zelig something, Simcha Zelig. It's the Rav of Brisk, so he lit the fire. The story in Brisk that you have to be machmer for pekuach nefesh, not machmer for Shabbos. You have to be machmer for pekuach nefesh. Okay. Amar Meimar, Hanami Sabi de Pumpadisa Amrino. This was also said by the elders of Pumpadisa, which is Rav Yehuda. The Itmar, Ezu Asher Stam. How do I know what's considered an Asherah tree? Of course, if people are bowing down to it and offering sacrifices, then it's a tree of idol worship. But if I don't have that, and I just see a tree, how do I know if it's an Asherah or not? So Amarav, Rav says, if the priests of Avodah Zarah are watching the tree, but they don't eat the fruit. So that's considered that it's a tree of idolatry. Why not? Why aren't they eating the fruit? It must be that there's something that they think about this tree. It's Avodah Zarah. Shmuel says, let's say they say that the fruits of that tree are going to be used for beer. The tamri, the dates of that tree are going to be used for beer of the Nitzrafi house. Nitzrafi is Avodah Zarah house. Now, Hashem Avodah Zarah. The Steinsaltz says that it was actually the Nisrafi, and they were the fire worshippers that were then in Persia. And the halach is that when you say a name of an Avodah Zarah, you're supposed to change it to like make fun of it. So kratzmach or something. So the Chazal switch it to Nitzrafi instead of Nisrafi, to mispronounce it. So that's considered also a tree of Avodah Zarah, even though you didn't see actually anyone worshiping. They just pronounced that the fruits are going to be used for that celebration. I don't know if you say Amar Meimar. But Amrli Sabi de Pumpatisa, Hilchasa Kavasei de Shmuel. And the Sabi de Pumpatisa say, this is a Meimar saying, that the halach is like Shmuel. It's an interesting thing because it wasn't necessarily a machlekes. It's just maybe even like Shmuel. Maybe that's what it means. I'm not sure. Meisvei, the Gemara now has a question back on the statement of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said that when you're mezaka, the Eruv, the Shitufei Mavos, you have to lift it one tefach off the ground. The Gemara asks, Ketzad Mishtatzim Mavi, quotes a brisa. How do you make a Shitufei Mavos? How do you join the alleyway together that all the courtyards can carry within each other and also within the alleyway on Shabbos? So, because the alleyway is a public area and the courtyards are private areas. So you're going from private to public. That's not a real Rosh Hashanah, but it looks like it. So it says, you bring a barrel of wine, barrel of oil, of dates, Mishal Gregors, those are dried figs, Mishal Sharmini pears, other types of fruits, probably dried. Excuse me. If it's his own, he owns them. So tzarech lizkais, then he has to acquire it to them. How do you say acquire to? Is there a word for that? I guess give over. He has to give it over to them. And if they own it, so he's taking their things, whatever they store it in the courtyard. So tzarech l'idea, you have to let them know what you did, that you used their items for a shituf. Umagbia min hakarka mashu, and you lift it off the ground the mashu. Doesn't say a tefach. Rav Yehuda told me I need a tefach. I have a brisa that says a mashu. It's a kasha on Rav Yehuda. He says that you have to lift it off the ground the tefach. The Gemara says, "My mashu nami de kamar." What does it mean, mashu? Tefach. Mashu means a tefach. It's a small amount, a small measurement. It's a tefach, one handbreadth. Itmar, stated by Amaram Shitufim Mavais, talking about the joining of alleyways, of courtyards around an alleyway. Rav Amar Ein Tzarech Lizkais. Rav says that you don't need to acquire it for everyone, acquire it to everyone. Shmuel Amar Tzarech Lizkais. Shmuel says that you do need to. The Rav is arguing with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says it's mezakalahan, that you have to acquire it. Rav says you don't have to. It's not a big deal for Rav to argue with our Mishnah. Rav is a Tana and he can argue with the Mishnah. But the Gemara would emphasize what's going on, that Rav is doing that. The next case, Eiruvin Tchumen. What about an Eruv Tchumen? This is interesting. The person's walking outside the city, 2,000 amas. Can you make an Eruv Tchumen for someone else without giving him the food? You would have to have someone else there to acquire it for that person. Let's say you walk out the city, you own the food, and you want to make the Eruv for someone else. It has to be a transfer. So Rav Amar Tzarech Lizkos. All of a sudden, Rav over here says, no, over here you have to do zikui. You have to get it acquired to that person, which wasn't mentioned in our Mishnah, and he was lenient by the Shitufim Avos that you didn't need to. Shmuel Amar Ein Tzarech Lizkos. Shmuel says, no, you don't need to. You can put food down for anyone. It becomes his location for Shabbos, and that person can walk. 2,000 amas past that food. Bishlem Shmuel. We understand Shmuel. Hachatanan v'achaleitanan. I have a Mishnah about Shitufim Avos. It says tzarech umezaka lehem. That means tzarech lizkos. You have to acquire it to them. You have to have it acquired by them, and it's not by them. It's for them. That's only by Shitufim Avos. That's only by the joining of the Aliyahs. But by the Erev Tchumen, by the extending a person's location on Shabbos, so that you don't need to. I don't have a Mishnah that says it, and Shmuel fits with that, with the lack of a Mishnah. You don't need to. Ela Rav, my time of what's the reason for Rav? Rav is doing exactly the opposite of the Mishnah. It says Tanai. No, it happens to be a Machlekes Tanai. The Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. There's a story with Rabbi Shia's daughter-in-law. She went to the bathhouse. It's Friday afternoon. Maybe she's delayed. Maybe she went. She didn't realize it was out of the tchum. It got dark. She can't get back. So her mother-in-law, Rabbi Shia's wife, makes an Erev Tchumen for her to allow her to walk back to the city. She should be able to get back home. So somewhere in the middle of the path between the Merchatz and the city, she put down food for her daughter-in-law. The story came to Reb Chia. Is this acceptable? But he said it's not acceptable. It's not a good Erev Tchumen. The poor daughter-in-law is stuck there in the bathhouse. It's get very waterlogged. It's until Shabbos is over. I'm sure there was an area to wait. So Amalai Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yosi Bavloi. Rabbi Chia was machmer here. So Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yosi, that's Rabbi Yosi ben Chalafta's son. Rabbi Yosi ben Chalafta is a student of Rabbi Akiva. So his son is Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yosi. He was I think a chavrusa with Rabbi Danasi. So Rabbi Chia was also there by Rabbi Danasi. Was a student of Rabbi Danasi. And Rabbi Chia right now was being machmer. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi tells Rabbi Chia Bavloi, Babylonian. Rabbi Chia came from Bavel. He came to Eretz Yisrael. This is his nickname. They call him Bavloi, Babylonian. Kol kachat machmer be'eruvin. You're so strict about Eiruvin. Kachamar Abba, my father, this is Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi talking. My father, Rabbi Yosi ben Chalafta, he said, Kol sheyesh lach lahakal be'eruvin hakel. You should be lenient in Eiruvin. Anything that you can be lenient. We had a page ago that Montana Eiruvin is Rabbi Yosi. He's the author of the whole Eiruvin. And he says that you should be lenient in Eiruvin. So, should be lenient. Okay. Now, we didn't explain what's going on here. What was the story? Why was Reb Chia machmer? They had a question. Why was Reb Chia machmer that it doesn't work? Mishal chamaisa irvala. Mishum delei zichsala. Was it the mother-in-law's food? And our issue is that she didn't acquire it for her. She didn't give it over to the daughter-in-law. It was the mother-in-law's food. And like we said, that it needs to be given over, at least according to Shmuel in our Mishnah. Oh, that's a mistake. By Shitufim Avos, it needs to be given over. By Erev Tchumen, Shmuel holds it doesn't need to be given over. Only Rav holds that it needs to be given over. So the Gemara is asking now, is it Rav's opinion that the Erev Tchumen wasn't given over to the other person, in this case, the daughter-in-law? Or maybe she used her daughter-in-law's food, but she did it without her intention. She took her lunchbox and she put it within the 2,000 amas. So they responded So one of the students responded to Rabbi Yaakov Shmei. His name was Rabbi Yaakov. L'didim mefarshlim minei de Rabbi Yechanan. I heard this in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that Mishel Chamaisa Irva, that the food belonged to the mother-in-law, Rabbi Shia's wife. Mishum Delay Zichsela, and the problem was that she didn't acquire it for the daughter-in-law, and that's why it didn't work. That's the opinion of Rav. So Rav follows Reb Chia's opinion. Reb Chia was the one that answered. Rav follows that opinion. We said Tanaihi. We're saying that Rav has a different opinion than our Mishnah. Then it's not really than our Mishnah, but Rav has a source that another source of where to get that you paskin that Erev Tchumen needs mezachen, that you need to be mezaket. Amar Rab Zera Rab Yaakov Ra the Bas Yaakov. Rab Zera says to Rab Yaakov, who is the son of the daughter of Yaakov. His grandfather's name was Yaakov. Doesn't give us his mother's name, but the father's name isn't mentioned. Apparently, he was a bad guy. Rashi tells us, so we don't mention the father's name. Kimatis Hasam. When you reach there, now this must be going to Eretz Yisrael. And it says Rabbi Zera. Usually Rav Zera, when he was in Bavel, it's Rav Zera. When he went to Eretz Yisrael, it became Rabbi Zera. That's the rule, that the Yud gets added to the name if you're from Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan, as opposed to Rav Ashi. Anyone that's just Rav is in Bavel. Anyone that's Rabbi is in Eretz Yisrael. But over here, it sounds like Rab Zera is in Bavel, and he's telling Rabbi Yaakov to go to, when you go to Eretz Yisrael, this is what you should do. Maybe he's called Rabbi Zera because later on he went to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe that's why he has that. So Kimatis Hasam, when you reach Eretz Yisrael, Akiv Azil Sulma Detzor, you should take the ladder of Tyre, which is along the coast. Take the other route, go the longer way. And ask Rabbi Yaakov Baridi, he must have been somewhere along the way. Ask him. He asked him, Mishal Chamaisa Irva, Mishum Delay Zichsala, Aitam Mishala Irva, Mishum Deshlemidai. The question that we had, what was going on over there by Reb Chia? Was it the mother-in-law's food and she didn't give it to her daughter-in-law, she didn't do mezaket, and therefore it didn't work as an Erev Tchumen? Or was it the daughter-in-law's food and she used it without the daughter-in-law's permission? Exactly the way we said it. That it was the mother-in-law's food and she didn't give it over to the daughter-in-law. Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Naktinan, we've established the halacha. Echad Eiruvin Tchumen, Vechad Eiruvin Chatzeres, Echad Shitufei Mavayis. All of these Eiruvin, Erev Tchumen, which is used to walk 2,000 amas outside the city, more than 2,000 amas outside the city. A Erev Chatzeres, which is used to join the houses in a courtyard to be able to use that. Everyone could use the common area. And Shitufei Mavayis, to surround the courtyard that's surrounding an alleyway. Everyone can use the alleyway, which is the common area. All of those tzarech liskos, the food needs to be given to everyone else in that complex. You have to be acquired for them, which means that you have to transfer it over to someone else who acquires it for them. Boy, Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman has a question. Eiruvin Tavshilin. What about an Erev Tavshilin? We didn't mention Erev Tavshilin, the whole Masechta. And Eiruvin, you have to wait 80 pages. Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin is used if Yom Tif leads into Shabbos. Yom Tif is on a Friday, so you start cooking. And there's a problem to cook from Yom Tif to prepare from Yom Tif to Shabbos. But if you make an Erev Tavshilin, you start preparing before, then you can continue on Yom Tif to continue for Shabbos. Now, if you make the Erev Tavshilin for yourself, so you make it for yourself. But if you're making it for other people, so for other people to do preparations, how does that work? Do you have to be mezaket for them or not? Do you need to be mezaket or not? Rav Yosef, mighty Baile. Rav Yosef gets like surprised at Rav Nachman that he's asking this question regarding Erev Tavshilin. What's his question? Lishmili hadam Rav Nachman bar Rav Ada, Rav Nassan bar Rav Ada. I have an abbreviation here. I'm not sure what it is. Rav Nassan bar Rav Ada Amar Shmuel. Doesn't he know what was said by Rav Nassan, I guess, bar Rav Ada in the name of Shmuel? Eiruvin Daf. Shmuel said that you have to. Why is Rav Nachman asking if you have to be mezaket? It's clear. Shmuel said. Amalei Abayas, Abayas, Rav Yosef's student, in defense of Rav Nachman. He says to his teacher, Pshita d'Lishmele. He didn't hear it. D'Ishmele, mighty boile. Of course he didn't hear it. Otherwise he wouldn't have asked the question. Amalei, he says, 1 second. It's much more complicated, Rav Yosef is saying. But when it came to Eruv Tchumen, he didn't paskin like Shmuel. Shmuel said that you need to be mezak. Shmuel said you don't need to be mezaka Erev Tchumen, and Rav Nachman said that you do need to. So it's not just that he didn't hear of Shmuel. Maybe he doesn't hold of Shmuel. The Gemara says, 1 second. Abayas responding, Hachiyashta. Bishleima Hasam over there when it came to Erev Tchumen, Pligi Rav Shmuel. There's a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. If you need a second person there to give it to acquire it for other people, for the other person. The Kamashman Kachurman Demar V'Churman Demar. And he paskened by Rav, by Erev Tchumen. He paskened by Shmuel, by Shitufei Mavais. So he was taking an extra chumrah. He had someone that argued with Shmuel, so he paskened like Rav, which was okay. He accepted that opinion. Aval Hacha, but over here by Erev Tavshilin, Isa de Shmiele Miyakaman de Palig. Is there anyone that argues? If he heard of Shmuel, is there anyone that argues? There's no one that argues. He wouldn't have gone like a different opinion. There is no other opinion. It must be that he didn't hear of Shmuel's halacha.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Why do you need another person? Couldn't you just make it hefker and then acquire it for the person?
That's a good question. You can make it hefker, but then no one acquires it. I think in order to acquire for someone else, you need to have someone giving it over. I hear what you're asking now. Magbia mitzia lachaveri kana chaveri. If you pick something up for your friend, there's a Mishnah somewhere. You can pick it up for someone else. Maybe that's a trick that they're not giving us. I don't know. Maybe they're just telling us if it works, what you're saying, then what they're telling us is the proper way to do it, and this is the original way of doing it. And then that you look in the place and you see that there's another. But when those things come up, they usually say, there's usually one of the opinions that say, if that would have worked, they would have told us. So, you gotta know. Okay. Tosfos here says, when Rav Nachman says that you need to be mezaket, you see Tosfos Amar Rav Nachman, he says v'chein halacha v'chein pasuk b'shiltis. What about Eiruvin Tavshilin? He says kulam tzrichim liskas Eiruvin Tchumen chatzer shitfim veis Eiruvin Tavshilin. Even though Rav Nachman had a question, that's because he didn't hear of Shmuel. But Shmuel says that you do need, so Eruv Tavshilin does need someone to be mezaket. I think it's only for the Rav that's making it for, I'm not sure. I think it's only for the Rav. In the Siddur it says, mezak al yedei acher, that you give it to someone else when you look in the instructions in the Siddur, that you have another person there and you give it to them. But that could be because it says the kol, everyone that lives in the city. You're doing it for more than yourself. That could be why. Maybe if you're only doing it for yourself, it's not necessary. I'm not sure why the instructions of the Siddur are only for the Rav that's doing it. every person makes an Erev Tavshil, and he reads that same paragraph, it sounds like he's the Rav of the city that's making it for everyone. I'm not sure why it's like that. Hahu Tarzina. Sounds like a television character. But he's this is a non-Jewish person that's in charge of the armory of the king, the protection. He's a security for the city, or maybe a soldier type person. David Beshivusi de Reb Zera was in the neighborhood of Reb Zera. Amalei Oigel, probably Amrulei. Oigelon Rishusach. Rent to us your property. We learned that to make an Erev with a non-Jew, he doesn't contribute food. You have to rent his rights. You have to rent his rights to the communal area. So Lo Yaigelo, he's not doing that. Asla Kami de Reb Zera, so they come to Reb Zera, who lived in that community. Amalei Ma'al Lemega Midabisu. Let's go rent from his wife. She's not as stubborn. Maybe she'll rent it to us. Rish Lakish said in the name of a great person, Amanu Rab Chanina, and that's Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina was a great person. Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama was his name. He was their teacher. Ishtei Shaladam Mareva Shlemi Daite, that the wife can make the Erev Shlemi Daite without his. So therefore, you can rent it from her as well. Okay. Ahu Tarzina, another one. David B'Shvivusa de Rav Yehuda Baroshia. This fellow lived in this non-Jewish person, some sort of security person. He lived in the area of Rav Yehuda Baroshia. Amala Oiglan Rishusach. He said to him, rent to us your rights to the property. Lo Yoiglu. He doesn't want to rent it to them. Asal Kami de Rav Yehuda Baroshia. So they came to Rav Yehuda Baroshia. Amalei Mal Lemegar Midabisu. Can we rent from his wife? Layav biyadi. Rav Yehuda Baroshia didn't know the answer. Asal Kami de Rav Masna or Rav Matana. Layav biyadi. He didn't know the answer either. Asal Kami de Rav Yehuda. They came to Rav Yehuda. And Amalahu Hachi Amashmal Ishti Shaladam Arav Shlemi Daite, that a person's wife can rent without his permission, can make the Erev without his permission. Now, Taisus over here says, interesting question. We had earlier in Eiruvin that you can use a person's worker. You don't have to rent it from the owner. Remember that Gemara? You can use the worker. And who said that? It was Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda himself said. So Taisus asks, you could have brought it from there that you can use a worker. You can use a worker, for sure you can use a wife. So it says, no, we wanted to bring specifically from the wife exactly the question that we were asking. It's true, we could have brought that, but this was more direct. The answer was more direct. You can use a wife, so we said you could use a wife. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. If the women made the Erev without their husband's knowledge, it doesn't work. What's going on? You told me you can make an Erev with the women, with the wife. Now it says you can't. The Gemara says like kasha, hada asar, hada la yasar. The way that there's different ways of learning this. One of the ways of learning this is if it's the situation, the scenario is that if they don't contribute to the Erev, then the Erev becomes possible. It's forbidden to walk there, to carry in that common area. So then they can contribute without their husband's consent because they're doing this type of fixing the area. But if it's the type of Erev that it's mutter without that, why? Because this is the type of courtyard that's combining it to another courtyard on the other side. It could be two separate Eiruvin. They're just doing this extra thing to combine it together. For that, you need the husband's consent. This is not just fixing a problem. This is going out of the way and getting something, that's beyond what was necessary. It also makes sense to say this. Dimkein kasha de Shmuel ad Shmuel, or else we'll have a contradiction. Shmuel and Shmuel, Damar Shmuel, Echin nei Mavoi. Shirag l'shtatim nei Mavi v'lei nishtatif. if someone is accustomed to making a shituf with the rest of the alleyway, the joining together, so the rule is they take it without his consent because he always did it. Ragil in, that's only if he always does it, yes. Shein ragilai, if he doesn't always do it, then not. Why does he always do it? Because this was the situation where it would have been usher if they didn't do it. So therefore, to fix the problem, not you're allowed to do it without his consent. Taisus here points out, if you can use a wife, if the wife can make the Eruv without her husband's consent, can the wife make the Eruv for the whole community without her husband's consent? Can she be mezakeh the food to everyone else without her husband's consent? This is going to become very costly. Or is it only for herself? He says Taisus says only for herself. She can't do the Eruv for everyone without her husband's consent. Yeah, when there's a knock on the door, someone's collecting for tzedakah. So only the wife's home. So the wife is allowed to give money to the person, even though all the money belongs to the husband. She's allowed. The husband allows her to give small amounts, even without discussing this. It's considered that he allows her to give small amounts. What would be normal to give to someone that comes to the door. So that would go along these lines as well. That's only something that would be very regular that the husband would have agreed to. Okay. Shema Mina. Okay, that's a good raya. Lema Messiah. Let's say that this is a support. The following is a support for what we said. We can force one of the residents of this complex to contribute to the lechi and the kaira of this alleyway. Now that's just a cross beam or a post that's on the side. Gemara says Shani Hasam Deleka Mechitzas. I think you're supposed to read it mitzad. And here there's a whole discussion what this means. The Gra, or it could be Lishna Achrina, Mitzad Shani. Shani Asim Deleka Mechitzas. Here, it's not for the halachas of carrying. Here, they're doing it as a protection. I don't know what the big protection is with a crossbeam they're doing it just to close off the entranceway, or to make it more narrow, which they do in buildings. They do some renovations, and everyone has to contribute, whether you agreed to that or not. That's part of the problem living in a building. That they make decisions, and then everyone has to participate. The Gra over here says that the word mitzad is actually a corruption of mem beis dalid, which is bezdin, shiny. That it's considered that the bezdin imposed this obligation to set up the lechi and the kaira. As opposed to contributing food, I guess. Okay. How else can you learn mitzad shiny? I'm not sure. They have other interpretations for this. Okay, Itmar. Rav Chia Barashi Amar Oisim Lechi Asherah. Rav Chia Barashi says that you can use wood from an Asherah tree, which is forbidden. You can use this wood to make a lechi. A lechi is a post at the side of the entranceway to an alley, which gives us a line, a demarcation of where the alley ends. Had a discussion if that's considered a mechitza, or if it's, I forget how we paskin. So one was considered a mechitza, one was considered a siman. Rav Shimon ben Lakish Amar Eisen Kaira Asherah. He says that you can use the crossbeam as an Asherah. The Asherah could be used as a Kaira, as the beam that goes across the alleyway. Mandam Kaira, if you hold it, you can use it for a Kaira, Kolshkein Lechi, then for sure you can use it for the post. Mandam Lechi, the one that says that you can use it for the Lechi, so Avol Kaira Lai, but you can't use it for the Kaira. What's the difference? The Gemara explains, I don't have any measurement of how wide the Lechi needs to be. It could be the thinnest little piece of strip of wood. That would be kosher for a Lechi, as long as it's protruding a little drop. The Kaira, it says, needs to be a tefach. Now, when I have something that's asur ba'ana, so it's considered like it's burned. I can't have any benefit. It's considered like it doesn't have any measurement. So if there's no measurement there, then it's not going to work. But so if I hold that it's a kaira, that it could be used as a kaira, then for sure it could be used as a lechi, which doesn't need any measurement. But if I hold it could be used as a lechi, then not necessarily could it be used as a kaira, because a kaira needs to have a tefach with, and this may not be considered like it has that. Okay, there's a new Mishnah. On the Smayat Eichel, let's say the food got diminished. It's like that story with the wine, and the king was coming. Everyone took a cup and added in 1 glass of water. By the time the king came, the whole thing was water. So anyway, what happened over here, everyone just took a little bit, or whatever happened, there wasn't enough left. So Maisif and Mizaka, you can add and you mizaka it to everyone else. You don't have to let them know. Nitaisfu aleihem, let's say more people move in to the complex. So maisif umizaka v'tzarech leidia, you have to add, and you have to let them know. You see, before, when you're adding, all of those people contributed once. You assume that they want it. They didn't change their mind. So you can be mazakit to them. You don't have to let them know. Over here, you have a new person. You have to let him know that you're being mazakit to him food for the Eruv. Kamu shir, and what's the shir of the Eruv? Bisman Shem Eiruvin, if there's a lot of people there. So Mazrin Shteish Sudas Lakulam. We have to see how many is a lot. All right, we'll see. It's going to be 18 people, but that would mean that you need two meals for everyone. That's enough. Just 2 meals for all 18 people. Bisman Shem Muatin. But if there's just a few people, then then you need to have the size of a dried fig for each person. Rabbi Yossi says that that's only when you initially make the Eruv. But when you're finishing, it could be even the smallest amount. You don't need to add anymore. If it's once the Eruv was made, even if it gets diminished, it's still kosher. The only reason why you need to make an Eruv Chatzeros, if you did a Shituf Mavais as well, you already joined all the alleyways. So the Eruv Chatzeros is not necessary according to this Mishnah. You're only doing it just so that the children should see an Eruv and they shouldn't forget that there's a concept of Eiruvin. Because you did the greater Eruv. You did the Shitufei Mavais. You joined the whole alleyway, which includes the Eruv. But Maya Skinan, what are we talking about when you're adding, and we said that you don't have to let them know? What is it, if it's saying, talking about that you're adding the same type of food, you're adding wine to wine or whatever. My area, Nismayit, why does it have to say that if it got diminished, you're allowed to add Afilu Kalanam, even if it got finished, you're allowed to set up a new one, not only to add to something that got diminished. You could have told me a bigger chiddush. Ella b'shnei minim, it must be, why don't you tell me the bigger chiddush that you're allowed to set up a new one? It must be because you're adding to the old one, but you're adding something new, and a new type of food. Then if that's the case, I feel nismayit namila, then you're not allowed to add. The Tanya, kala eichel min echad, ein tzarech leidiyah. If kala ha'eichel, min echad ein tzarech leidiyah, mi beis minim tzarech leidiyah. It says that you have to let them know what you're doing if you're adding another type of food to this. There's 2 ways of explaining this. You could explain it that it's the same type of food. You can explain it that it's 2. Nismat made. we said nismayit, but we really mean that it got totally diminished. If it got diminished, here it got crumbled in a way that there's nothing left. Yeah, it got diminished totally. That's the pshat, and therefore we didn't say the bigger chiddush because this is the big chiddush, that it was totally crumbled. Iba yisem mishnei minim, kala shiny. What does that mean, kala shiny? When we said that you needed to let them know if you're changing, if you're adding a different type of species, that's only if the first one was totally finished. Then you're using a new type of item, of food, then you have to let them know. But if there still is the original one left, it's not a problem. If more people come, then you have to add to the Eruv, you have to let them know. Amar Rav Shizri, Amar Rav Chisda, Zoyse Meres. This tells me that Chalukan alav Chaveirav al Rabbi Yehuda. His friends argue on Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanana was taught in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda b'medavar mamurim be'Eruv Tchumen. When do we say that you have to know about it? That's only by Eruv Tchumen. Aval be'Eruv Chatzeres ma'arvin bein ladas bein shlemidas. You don't need any knowledge of it. You can make an Eruv without the people over there knowing. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And our Mishnah says that you need das, that you have to let them know. Must be that they argue with Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, Pshita de Chaluk. Of course they argue. It's straight Mishnah. You don't have to tell me the obvious. I could have thought that when does Rabbi Yehuda say that the Eruv Chatzeres is bein ladas? That's with one courtyard between two alleys. Aval Chatzer shama b'yachad a maloi. I'm not sure which way this is going. Is this going? Which way is easier when you need less intention? Oh, he must inform them if it's between two alleyways. In other words, maybe our Mishnah is a Chatzer ben Shnei Mavos, and Rabbi Yehuda would agree to that. Kamash Malan, that even if it's a Chatzer ben Shnei Mavos, in other words, where it's not totally necessary to make that Eruv, because each Mavi can have its own. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda would say that you need to inform Kamash Malan. Rabbi Yehuda, even in such an instance, says you don't need to inform the people. Okay. So the Tana of the Mishnah holds that you have to let them know in all cases. How would we learn this? That the tzarech lahidiyah, that's what we're doing. The tzarech lahidiyah of our Mishnah is because it wasn't a totally necessary Eruv, because it was a Chatzer ben Shnei Mavos, Kamash Malan, that even by a totally necessary Eruv, you still need to inform the people. Now we say, Kamush Yurai. What is the measurement? We say Kamahu Merubin. The Gemara asks, when we said that if there's a lot of people there, then you need 2 meals. How many are a lot of people? Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmol Shmeinei Asrei Bnei Adam. 18 people. Shmeinei Asrei V'sulai. More than that is not considered a lot. Only 18 is considered a lot. The Gemara says, Ema Mishmeinei Asrei Ve'elach. That was a little bit obvious, but means from 18 and on. What is specific about Shemon Esrei? What are you getting over here? Amar Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yehuda, Rav Yitzchak, the son of Rav Yehuda, says, I heard from my father. Kol she'ila mechalke l'mazir shtei sudas b'nei v'emagas gregas l'chol echad ve'echad hein meruben v'sagi b'mazir shtei sudas. V'loi mu'ataninam. What we're looking for is that we take 2 meals, and you divide it up into the 18, and each person gets a a groigris, a dried fig, the size of a dried fig. So then that's considered a merubin. So the 2 meals supplies a groigris for 18 people. By the way, this is telling us that 2 meals is 18 groigris. So it's really the same measurement. Why does the Mishnah have to do this? What it has to do is it's telling me that from 18 and on, you don't need to add an extra groigris per person. That's what we're learning. Shmenas v'eilach. Yeah. So it sort of like stops at 18. Once you have 18, you don't need to add more. Okay, let's leave it here for today.